This is going to be a good one because, as some of you might know, really thinking about moving to the States, visit the States as many times as I can. I love it. But apparently someone even as experienced as Lawrence, who's lived in America, he's a Brit who's lived in America for, I think, 16, 17 years. There's things that he's been doing wrong that he had no idea. So if he didn't know that these were rules, then there's no way I'd possibly know. So I think it's a good idea for me to watch this one.
Hello, I used to live in Britain, a country that, while not big on people who like to follow rules, is a country that likes to issue them.
See it, say it, thought it.
So imagine my surprise after I moved to the United States and realised that I'd left one set of rules behind only to have to learn another. Before I go any further, one rule that I have is that if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, do that now. In the meantime, here's a devastating list of rules. Some that are legally enforced, others that are just good practice, that I only encountered after moving to the United States. And the first of those pertains to an item of clothing that I wasn't wearing at the start of this video. And no, I'm not talking about my underpants. I'm talking about that, a baseball cap, a very popular form of headwear that originated right here in America.
Yeah, Americans love wearing hats for sure, way more than the average Brit.
And so you might think that there aren't too many places in America where you could get in trouble for wearing one.
Really?
But it turns out you can, especially at the type of establishment that America is also well known for, restaurants. Now don't get me wrong, you could probably walk into a McDonald's like this and nobody would bat an eyelid. But where you get in trouble is where you go into one of those restaurants where the cheapest bottle of wine is $100. In other words, fine dining restaurants. And before the YouTube money came in, I couldn't afford those restaurants. So this is something that I've only just found out. And so my wife and I walk into a steakhouse here in Chicago, and I'm wearing what I think was a Chicago-themed hat. So imagine my surprise when they said,
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to remove your hat.
We were
He does a pretty good American accent at this point.
served by the Muppets, and I was devastated by his words because I was going bald. On the other hand, I'm British and didn't want to cause a scene. So I removed it and just covered my bald spot the whole time like this, utterly oblivious to the fact that nobody cared. What can I say? I'm precious. But since that incident, I've come up with my own rule, and it's this. I'll enter the restaurant wearing no hat, and if I see another diner wearing one, it goes back on. Of course, these days, I'm able to get around this by having restaurant quality food at home. And the best part is, I don't have to cook it. You see, for the past year...
Yeah, with the hat thing, to be honest, in a fine dining restaurant, I don't really wear hats, to be honest, but if I was to move to America, I would probably wear them more. Like, what other places are you not really supposed to wear hats? Is it just fine dining restaurants? Or I imagine like in places like church and stuff, you probably can't wear a hat either.
Below. Many years ago, back when I lived in Indiana, my wife's grandfather, who was a very patient and sane individual, volunteered to give me driving lessons. And it was great, really, because this was the only time that I got to see him flustered. But one thing that I'll never forget about taking those lessons is that he had me stop for a school bus due to the fact that the bus had a big stop sign sticking out the side of it. Now, thankfully, I was able to stop and no children were harmed in the making of this video. But afterwards, I remember clocking that and thinking, what? In all the years that I lived in England, I don't remember there being much of a hoo-ha about having to stop for school buses in particular. And
no, you don't. There's no such rule over here.
It hit me.
Like, whoever has right of way has the right of way.
Not the school bus, but this epiphany. Our school buses don't look like school buses. They just look like buses that the general public would ride. Here, as has been documented many times on this channel, school buses are designated in a very specific yellow that make them look distinct from public transit. So it's a bit easier to enforce a rule like that, I suppose. And what does it say? Well, to me, it says that America accepts the fact that children will occasionally run into the road and therefore you've got to drive with caution. It also says that British kids have been rigorously taught the green cross code and so won't walk into traffic.
Will they see that car? Think I better have a word with those two.
And therefore you can continue driving recklessly.
So the stop sign on the bus is so that, like, let's say you're driving or that there's a bus here and you're driving there. When the sign comes out, you cannot overtake the bus. Is that what that means? You basically have to wait for the bus to move off and then you can move off?
I don't think the last part's true, but only because I don't want to get into trouble. Anyway, back when I still drank alcohol, there were certain American rules around intoxication that I had to abide by. Thankfully, when I moved here, I was over 21, so that was never an issue. It was more the finer details, the local rules around who can and who can't consume alcohol, and on what days of the week they can and can't purchase it. And one Sunday, many years ago, this hit me almost as hard as the hangover that I almost didn't have. Are you confused? Alright, well let me explain it like this. Back when I lived there, the state of Indiana had this law that you could not buy alcohol if it was a Sunday. This is an example of what is known in America as a blue law. What? A blue law is a law that restricts or bans various activities on a particular day of the week, which date back to religious efforts to curb drinking because, you know, Jesus wouldn't like it. Yes, he would. He turned water into wine. Now, one of my favorite things, geographically anyway, about America is if you live in a...
So on Sundays, in some states, you cannot buy liquor. Wow. That's interesting. Nowhere in those states. Like absolutely nowhere?
State where something that you like is banned, but is not in the next state over. You just drive to the next state over. I'm looking at you, that one liquor store in Dayton. Now, one thing that many Americans seem to be really into is improving their credit score. And to those of us who prefer to improve our Tetris score, this seemed a bit weirdly obsessive at first, till I found out that in America, your credit score is used for everything from renting to buying a house to getting employed. If you have a good credit...
Are you kidding me? They check your credit rating to get a job? What? That seems a bit invasive. Did they check your credit rating?
Score, you've already got one foot in the door. That rhymed. But if you've got a bad credit score, you might have to take out 6 credit cards and pay on them very quickly. And this was a bit of a shock at first, because when I lived in Britain, my credit score was usually of no interest to the entities in question. They were more interested in the things that were on your actual credit report. So if I'm looking to rent a flat in Britain, a prospective landlord running a credit check will only see publicly registered details such as information on bankruptcies, county court judgments, and the electoral roll. They have no need to access your credit score.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that. So they check your credit score before they offer you a job. But I mean, why do they need to know that? Unless you go, you know, as long as you turn up to the job and do the job, why do they need to know your credit score?
And finally, shoveling. And I don't mean the good kind where you're silhouetted by a sunset while Indiana Jones watches over you. I'm talking about shoveling snow, because that's all I talk about this time of year. Recently, I did do a video where I lamented the white stuff. But one thing I didn't mention is that in this country, American property owners are often legally required to shovel up the snow on the sidewalk and or pavement immediately in front of their property. For perspective, I personally have had to do that 6 times in the last month. But I think actually the frequency with which snow occurs in the American Midwest probably accounts for why that rule exists here and not in Britain. That my dog's barking. All right, we'll just try to plow through it. Plow snow. In fact, not only does Britain not have many laws for making you do this kind of thing, one government website goes to great pains to point out there is no law preventing you from clearing snow. On the other hand, I sort of like this rule. It forces me to be communal with other people. If I'm shoveling snow out there and they're shoveling snow out there, we make life better for each other by each other's presence.
And I suppose it keeps your house looking good, I guess. But why is it legally required? On what basis?
Unless we hate each other, in which case it's awful. That's it for this episode.
Very interesting. I'm still kind of surprised about the credit score thing for the job, because let's say you've got someone who's got a bad credit rating. They obviously need a job to pay their bills, which would maybe help their credit rating improve. You know, maybe they need the job to pay off the credit card debt. But then if they don't get the job because their credit rating's bad, then they can't pay off their debt, which keeps their credit rating bad. So, I don't know. How common is it? Like, let me Google it, actually. So, how common is it in America for employer to check your credit rating? Let's see here. It is moderately common with 50% of employers. Oh my God. Wow. Okay, so it's actually really, really, really common. I had no idea. That is completely new to me. I mean, hopefully if I do move to America, I'd be like fully self-employed anyway. Not that my credit rating's bad, but like, you know, I think it's pretty good. To be honest, I've not checked my credit rating in probably years. But I don't know, it just seems a bit much. What do you guys think about it? Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and check out the video I'm going to link right below this one. See you there.